There was a group of women that met at our conference for the very first time, and they became deep friends, and they went on a trip together. And so they posted, like, we met at the Replanted conference. We had never met before. We didn't know each other, and now we're dear friends. And they took this trip together, and like that's what we want, right? Like, yep. I always say my goal is that if Replanted disappeared and we vanished, it wouldn't matter because our families have found each other and they're in relationship.
Welcome, Jenn and Eric, to the James Trail Podcast. We're so excited to have both of you here today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, so Jenn and Eric represent an amazing ministry, an amazing conference, and they're both key staff members on all of the things that are happening with Replanted. And so I would love for you guys to take just a minute and tell us the maybe origin story, like your role with Replanted, which of course is, has multi parts to it. So if you could, one of you guys could explain some of that to us, maybe Jenn, if you could explain some of that to us and, so the perspective that you're coming from and some origins, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, awesome. So my name's Jenn Hook. I'm originally a Canadian that lived in Chicago for a little while. Now I live in Dallas with my husband and I've got 2 kiddos. And, I used to be a trauma therapist that worked in the foster care system in the state of Illinois. And it was during that time that I was just seeing the realities of what the kids and parents were going through. A lot of my kids coming into counseling, just feeling really misunderstood, labeled as the problem children, with defiant behaviors and emotional issues and all these things, and people not understanding how trauma was impacting them. I had a lot of foster parents I was walking alongside as well that had really great hearts and intentions and wanted to come and, step into the stories of many of the kids that came into foster care and just felt really in over their heads and ill-equipped. I saw birth parents that really had a passion for wanting to get their kids back, that were just coming from really hard backgrounds and stories, but were being villainized and under-supported as well. And just felt like, goodness, if the church is really going to encourage families to foster or adopt, they have to show up and say yes to families who have said yes to this journey. And so that was the big missing piece that I was seeing, and just saw the church as a big part of the solution. We know, as a therapist, I know support is the number one predictor of family outcomes. And so we really just wanted to create spaces where we said, hey, come together in this shared space, in this shared journey, in the uniquenesses of your story, and be loved and seen and understood. We like to call them same here moments. When you share your story with somebody and someone else says, same here, I've been through that too, right? A lot of times you're like, you're my best friend. Exactly. Same here. Those are our conference battles. It's really powerful, but our kids need that too, right? I remember working with a little boy. He was 7. Him and his sister had come into foster care. Mom had substance abuse issues, and they really wanted to go home. And so how do you talk to your friends about that on the playground, right? Like, I want to be with my mom. Why won't she get sober to get me back? Does she not love me, right? These are not conversations our kids are just having with anyone. But when you can create a safe space with others who have been through those similar things, it's a really powerful thing. And so that's how Replanted started. I was working in the state of Illinois. I actually had this really profound God experience at our Holy Week. I was a Canadian and was planning to head back to Canada, and just encountered the Holy Spirit in a really profound way through 2 people I had never met who shared a vision that they got about me staying put. And so I just knew that was going to be for a reason. And so God was putting that on my heart at the same time working in my church, and I ended up having a conversation just at a random farewell party for a friend with one of our pastors who it turns out was an adult adoptee. And he asked the important question, what do you see as the church's role in supporting families? And so I gave some ideas that I had, and he said, I think we should go for it. And so it was through that conversation and just my work experience that Replanted was born. And we started first with support groups. And that's a big tier of what Replanted offers, is support groups for parents and kids. So it's for moms and dads, foster, adoptive, kinship parents, but also space and programming for kids to be able to connect around their shared experiences as well. And we love that. Like we hear testimonials all the time about kids finding their best friends at Replanted groups because they have shared experiences. And so the group started, and a year after we started the Replanted Conference, which is an extension of just that emotional, spiritual support and equipping. It's like a retreat. Eric can talk more about this, but it's like a retreat and a conference had a baby, and it's awesome. This is our 12th year, our 12th conference, which is wild to think about. But yeah, it's just been a really necessary and cool journey to engage churches and stepping in and coming alongside our families that are really needing support.
Okay, that's so cool. I just have to have a Canadian moment here that I did not know. I didn't realize that you had Canadian roots until you said so. And then you said about, and then I was like, okay, there it is.
There it
Makes sense.
I have a daughter-in-law who is Canadian, and I'm not thinking about her Canadian roots until she says pasta. I'm going to have some pasta for dinner. And I'm like, what did you just say? So I love actually that, international element and God's call to your life and his saying, yeah, actually, I'm going to call you to this crazy place we call the United States. And gosh, the amazing growth that has happened in these 11, 12 years. Like, what in the world? Like, tell us some of the big picture stats. Like, how many support groups are meeting? How many churches involved? First conference was, and maybe Eric, you can tell us some of this, but numbers, that kind of thing. I'm curious.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Oh goodness. So when we started the support groups, what was central to our heart is, hey, we want churches to be unified. We think that the body of Christ can be unified around supporting foster, adoptive, kinship families, and we wanted to do that. And so we just cold called churches in our community and said, hey, we're going to start this ministry. Do you want to join us? And because churches are resourced in different ways, right? Some churches have a big foster adoptive population. Some don't. And so, that maybe they're not going to start a ministry because they only have 2 or 3 families in their church that are in this journey, right? And so we said, why don't we pool our resources and open these groups up to anyone? And so we started in Chicago and Wheaton, Illinois, with one group. And we quickly, over the years, grew to 10 groups in that community. And that was just speaking to this significant desire for our families to be in relationship with one another. And so it was fun to see churches or, families from different churches meeting each other through replanted groups that maybe would never have met otherwise. Now are going to each other's birthday parties and beach days and stuff. And so it's been really fun. In 2017, we partnered with a conference out in Seattle, which is partly what our conference model is based off of. And we built this really beautiful partnership and we brought our groups there. And so that was our first kind of, what does it look like to help replicate these groups across the country? And so we started that in 2017 with lots of growing pains, obviously, but we now have groups all over the US. So we've got 45 plus groups around the US. I think we're in 19 different states now. We had 555 foster and adoptive parents as part of our groups and almost 700 children. And that honestly is that's the number I love the most. Because a lot of times when we think about support groups, we think parents need to come and be able to have this experience and connect with one another. And I always tell parents, these groups are more important for your kids than they are for you. And even if you're doing great as a family, your kids need to be with other kids that are wrestling with the same things, asking the same questions, feeling the same feelings. It's so important. So it's been amazing to see. It's definitely been a Jesus take the wheel sort of thing. We never dreamed of, Replanted. We were content in Wheaton, Illinois, so we never dreamed it was going to become a national organization and supporting families. But it's been fun. We've got really passionate, beautiful leaders and churches that are saying, yes, we want to lead these groups and we want to be intentional about coming alongside our families. And we love, we have group leaders that have been leading groups for 12 years, some 8, 7, these numbers are just a significance of they're changing family stories and trajectories. And these are passionate leaders that said yes to partnering with us. And it's just been so cool. And then the conference, Eric can step into this, but we started our conference back in 13, I guess. I think we had maybe like 100 people. And it was great, but it was a very classic conference. 2 years later, we kind of switched, what we were offering, and it's just been this really beautiful experience. And I'll let Eric step into this because this is definitely his wheelhouse, but it's been cool.
Yeah, just continuing the story of, God giving you that vision eventually to just say like no foster or adoptive family should go unsupported in their journey, especially emotionally and spiritually. And also just, God presents us with things and saying yes to it. COVID obviously changed a lot when the conference had evolved and grown, and then COVID hit. And then there are some virtual elements, which made things more complicated, but also opened up some doors. And so now Replanted is this national ministry with groups all across the country. And I was like, oh God, that's pretty cool. Now that there's groups in different spots, maybe they can host the conference environment in their area, and to see how God has kind of used that. And sometimes the conference comes first, sometimes the groups come first, and then they host a conference, and just a really cool synergy that happens with both of those ministries, I think. And so now we have conference experiences in multiple locations, including kind of the OG in Chicago, which has 600 people attending it, 150 volunteers with an amazing church partner out there, pouring their hearts out to serve their community in that area. And so yeah, we're excited for where it's at, and looking forward to finding more areas that are under supported or not supported at all, and trying to serve those families.
Okay, and so these virtual experiences of the conference, how many of those sites did you host last October?
Yeah, 18 of them beyond the Chicago environment. So we had all the time zones covered. We had Canada, of course, the UK. We've served in other international locations before too, where language provides an avenue. In South Africa and even in Asia, some small group environments, the content has reached out as far as that. And honestly, there's more people. It's gotten to the point where there's more people attending those environments than even in Chicago, if you add them all up together. So it's just cool to see what God is doing there. And we try to see them honestly as local in-person events. Of course, there are digital parts of that experience and watching some of those keynote presentations, but we really put a lot of heart and energy into making them local, interactive, community focused, bring our group's mentality of being all together, sharing same here moments to those experiences. So they are digital. We try to call them hybrid, but yeah, that's where we're at.
Yeah. A big part of our heart there, Meredith, was, honestly, we love it when people come to Chicago, right? It's nice. It's great to be with people in person there, but we realize like there's big barriers to that, finding childcare for people, like having the resources for families to be able to fly into Chicago. And we were like, that's not our model. Our model has always been to partner with local leaders to provide local support. And so we need to do that with the conference as well, so that it makes zero sense for people in Florida to fly to Chicago to get life-giving support. And so we want to empower churches and communities in their areas to be able to do that for their local communities, because then what happens, right, is people come into Chicago and they go home and they don't have any other support for the rest of the year, right? And that's not sustainable. And so we wanted to really try to, have it so that churches don't have to reinvent the wheel, and we resource them with everything we've got, to make it a very easy on-ramp to be able to host and provide this support for families. So it's been cool to see, we, between the virtual audiences and in person, we have over 1,200 attendees. And what's great about our conference is it's for moms and dads, right? This is a space where dads can come, foster, adopted, kinship parents can come and get the support and have everybody on the same page with how to meet the needs of your children, and just like getting poured into as well. So you don't have this lopsided dynamic in the home. And so it's just been a really fun journey.
There's so many things I love about, the conference and your paradigm. I think sometimes it's difficult when a ministry is taking off. It can feel like it's about the ministry, or it's about God, but it's about the growth of this ministry. But what's been so key about your growth, from what I can see, is your investment in the local church, where it's like if the people attending don't know anything about the word replanted, but they just show up and get support, like that's great. Like that's enough.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that's such a humble mindset, and it's such a servant-hearted way to love folks in this community, and it's just the heart of God. I just love it so much.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. Yeah, that's a big part of our heart is, we just wanted to create these spaces, and, if support exists in community is great. It doesn't need to be replanted. And we love pointing to partners. So we partner with churches, but we partner with organizations, individuals. It doesn't matter. Like our goal with Replanted is that someday a family would say there's too much support out there. And until that happens, we're not done. And that means all of us have roles to play. It's not just Replanted. It's far beyond us. And so, that's been something that we always try to keep at the forefront,
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Okay, so Eric, tell us, your full name. Give us a little bit of your story. How did you get involved with this awesome ministry?
Sure. Yeah, Eric Powell. What I love about Jenn sharing her story first is it's a beautiful reminder to me that I came from the other direction, where I just experienced what Replanted had to offer. So my wife and I are two-time adoptive parents internationally, and our second kiddo that came into our family came as a teenager, and so many understandable difficulties from her standpoint. When she entered our family, and we wrestled with a lot of those things. We struggled for years to try and get the right support, and to feel we didn't share our story with a lot of people. And even if some of our family are listening to this, we didn't share our whole story with some of even our closest family, just because it was such a dark spot. We felt shame, we felt guilt, we felt confusion. We didn't know how to handle every situation. And we were trying to, protect our daughter from, being thought of in certain ways, all those different things. And the short story is, in our deepest, darkest moment, we heard about Replanted because my wife was working for the church that it was hosted at remotely. And her first reaction was like, I don't think I'm in a place where we can even talk about, adoption and what we're going through. It's too tender right now. God broke down those barriers, and eventually we were looking at the breakouts and the sessions and the language, and it's like, oh, they're talking about grief. They're talking about loss. They're talking about the really, really hard things, relinquishment and residential treatment facilities, and all these things were like starting to kind of float to the top of our vernacular, things we were considering and processing. And so we took the staff discount and took a little bit of a leap of faith. And after a few months, we found ourselves at the Replanted conference, and just like, not even an overstatement, just instantly when we walked through the door, you felt the difference of the environment of being with other people who just understood. And we didn't premeditate any of this, but your guard kind of goes down, and you're in conversations with other people. You're like, I thought I was the only one. And they're like, oh no, I've walked some of those things too. Let me share my story. And so we had those same here paddles. Exactly. And it's such a real thing, the power of that, being in community. And so you fast forward, that incredible experience was really uplifting for us, the Christ focusedness of it, the being with others who get it, the breakout sessions. We went to a lunch and learned about Replanted groups. Our mind was kind of blown. We're like, okay, so we can bring this sort of connection and help and hope to our community. So we ended up signing up for that, which was another kind of God moment, because we didn't really feel like we were in the place to do that, but it felt so obvious. Like my wife and I didn't even talk about it. We just left and we're like, we're doing that, right? And we were. So that was awesome. The exhibitor tables, we had just randomly talked to a person, and a few months later had a grant for counseling for our daughter and for my wife. And so like all of the things that Replanted set out to do, and all of Jenn's vision over the years, like we experienced in 3 days, and left so encouraged. And I reached out to Jenn, and it's like, hey, that was really awesome. And I used to live here and go to that church. We're willing to help. And she's like, actually, we're hiring a conference director. So that's not what I was asking for. And a month later, I was the conference director. And it's just been a blessing to have that experience, to be poured into by Replanted and what God has given Jen and how the ministry has grown, and then to be able to give back and share our story as an encouragement to come alongside other families and parents and kiddos. And so now my wife and I, Diana, lead 2 Replanted groups in Omaha as well. So we're just feel blessed by what that has given us personally and our family and our son, like Jen talked about, being with other kids who get it and who understand, and building that community for him has been awesome. And our 2 groups worth of families, just every time, it's always a build up because it's a lot to pull off, but it is so worth it at the end of the day. And the moments in the group time and the kids, it's just a really great experience.
I mean, Jen, have you heard this whole story from Eric before? Because what a blessing to just see so much fruit just even in this moment. I mean, you see it beyond this moment, but
yeah, it was really cool to see how God was orchestrating that too. Because the year Eric came was the year we did the "and" theme, just honoring all the "ands" that the adoption and foster care journey is. And so a lot of what we do at the conference is create this space and opportunity to just go really deep with one another, but then to also hear from people with lived experience, right? So voices of adoptees and foster alum and birth parents. And so when Eric reached out, it was, you're creating this conference experience, and then you leave and you're hoping like lives were changed. Our goal with Replanted is always that people would leave feeling more supported, encouraged, and closer to Jesus for our groups and for the conference. And so that's what we're always hoping is going to happen. And so when Eric and Diana reached out, I got to hear a little bit of their story. And so it just felt like, man, God is showing up, and not that, it's not necessarily that things changed for them in the ways that like miraculously the family life got better and things with their daughter improved. We realized like there is no magic wand other than a miracle. And we believe in those, but we also just believe that God's just stepping into those hard spaces with us. And surrounding us with his love and his people and that unity. And so it was cool to hear that story from Eric. And at a time when we were as an organization transitioning, we had experienced a significant loss from our Replanted team with the person who had poured a lot into our conference experience with the same year paddles and glow stick prayer and the "and" theme. And she had died of cancer a couple weeks after the event that Eric and Diana had attended. And so that we were just feeling this tremendous loss. But yeah, Eric just, with his interest, and then just, our prayer had been that we would just find the right person that would just do it better than any of us could do. And that was Eric. And it was just felt really God ordained. And so that's been a really beautiful thing too. Our team, we have a great time. It's like planning this conference is a lot of work, but man, we have a good time doing it.
It's so fun. Yeah.
It's really fun. So yeah, it's been cool to hear Eric's story and just how they were changed. Their lives are changed.
I love that. That's so cool. And then Eric and I got connected couple of years ago. And I just remember from our first conversation, we just kind of like went there with like the hard stuff of our lives. And when we were talking about, James Trail and, potentially me coming and being a part of the conference, we were like, we need some hard topics. Like we need workshops that are gonna really minister to families that are feeling different things. And so Eric has given me a lot of courage to write content and create workshops with titles like, "I can't do this anymore." And, things like that, because I know that's a feeling I have had. And of course, I had quite a good number attend that workshop, and it's just, we all need to be speaking like real words and truth in those moments of, my situation isn't like magically better because I'm sitting here in this group, but I'm not alone in it. I'm not the only one in it. Not only because there's a group of people here to support me, but also because the Lord God Almighty has not forgotten me, and Jesus is still the suffering Savior, and the Holy Spirit wants to come in and heal. And not just heal the things in my kids, but all my stuff as well. Like the Lord cares about all of it. So yeah, it's just been a really fun journey, from my angle as well. So one thing I'm curious about, and Jenn, you can answer this first, is how has being a part of the ministry impacted your family?
Yeah. Well, I'll speak about me personally too. I mean, I remember when I was in grad school and doing some women counseling courses, and one of the courses we had to identify like what would be the hardest population for you to work with. And I remember thinking like, oh, that's easy. Anyone that hurts kids, right? And so fast forward a couple of years later, and I find myself working in foster care, and I find myself counseling birth parents who want to reunify with their children. And so it was very easy for me to have this lens. And I think, a lot of us have it, right? Is where we kind of glamorize foster adoptive parents, kids are the victims, birth parents are the villains, right? That's a kind of a general or, wide sweeping narrative. But man, that was working in foster care and working with Replanted just like shook that at its core. Just to have a greater empathy and understanding, but also to change my belief system where I firmly believe Jesus is cheering for all of us. And he's cheering for all of us to experience healing and to experience his grace and love. And no one is excused from that. And so if as a Christian and a believer, I need to embody that with everyone that I encounter and everyone that I work with. And so it really changed my perspective, my narrative, my family. My husband is a psychologist as well. He's a professor at the University of North Texas. And so it's been fun to step into this world with him as well and be digesting these things. But also, I think what's been really cool about how it impacts our family. My kids are really little. So my daughter's 4 and my son is 2, almost 2. So he can't even talk yet. But I think through just having a really greater empathy through what we've been doing with Replanted, my husband and his dad his dad had led a lot of small groups, and they wrote a book called Helping Groups Heal, which has become the staple training resource for Replanted. But it's just helped us lay this foundation of grace, right? When you experience something really painful in your life, we always ask this question, what did you need? What did you need from others, yourself, from God, right? And when we think about that, a lot of people will say, like, I needed to feel loved, understood. I needed a shoulder to cry on. Like, we didn't need advice. We didn't need, there's seasons where, meals are great, but like a lot of what people really want is a space to just be. And so my husband and I have had a really difficult infertility journey. We've had 5 miscarriages as part of our journey that have been very painful experiences. Yeah. But through those experiences too, we've been able to really help people understand how to step in and provide emotional and spiritual support in a way that's helpful, not hurtful, right? I think sometimes as Christians, we don't want to see people we love hurting. And that's where people a lot of times come at you with advice, or they try to, platitudes, right? Like, God has a plan for everything, or he's in control. And we say these things to try to like take away that pain. Except that's very invalidating, right? And like God created us as feelings beings, and those feelings are valid and they're real, and we shouldn't diminish them. And so I share this story a lot, but I remember that one of the very first miscarriages that we had after experiencing infertility for a while, we were calling people to let them know that we had lost the baby. And again, people don't want to see you hurting. And I remember with one family member saying like, well, at least now you can get pregnant, right? And I was like, I just lost a baby. I'm supposed to be sad about it. Don't try to take that sadness away. It's okay for me to be sad. I should be grieving this. And I think that's the power of Jesus too. I remember one of my pastors saying like, God has experienced the fullness of our emotions as well. He experienced the worst possible pain with the death of Jesus on the cross, worse than we could probably any of us will ever feel, right? And he experienced the biggest joy with the resurrection of his son and triumph over evil, right? And so we have a God that knows these very extreme and hard emotions, and it's okay for us to feel those too. And so I would say that's how it's impacted our family, is like being able to step into those emotional spaces with intentionality. I had a miscarriage just before Christmas last year, and my sweet daughter has just grown in a lot of empathy, even to the point that a couple weeks ago, we shared roses and thorns. And every day. And she was talking about a time that she felt sad during school. And I was like, I was validating her, like, oh, mommy feels sad too. It's okay to, feel sad sometimes. And then she said, I felt sad 2 times. And I don't even remember the first one. The second one she said is, I felt sad when mommy lost her baby. And that's still, she's 4 and she still remembers that from 4. It's not like we talk about it all the time, right? Like, but it was still like, our kids are experiencing and feeling things, we're experiencing and feeling things, and to be able to just like set that out and feel loved and supported in the way that Jesus really wants us to just give grace and say, you're loved no matter what, I've got you, I'm going to hug you and support you through it. I think that's, just been a really cool thing.
I just so honored by your sharing those stories here, and I know it's ministering to our audience as we speak. And I am so glad that you brought up the point about God's capacity for emotion. I think we think of God as being on this throne, like far, far away. And of course he is, he is on the throne, let's be clear, but he's not like stoic, far away, unfeeling, uncaring. Actually, the way I believe is that, like, if my capacity as a human for emotion is, this, then God, as, God of the universe, of all time, God our Father, the Father of Jesus Christ, like, if he is God, then his capacity for emotion must be so far beyond what our brains could even possibly fathom. And so, and I think if we read scripture and we can read scripture through that filter and realize the full range of emotion that the Lord has. And so I'm so glad that you brought that up, and in his capacity for sadness and for empathy and care for us in those low moments is not like far away, up in the clouds somewhere. It's like intimate. It's like right here with me, caring for me in those deepest places.
And I think that's what's important. I mean, even from my own experience, it's very easy for me to say, like, God, why did you let this happen? Right. And I'm sure many people listening to this, whether you've experienced something really hard or traumatic, or your kids have, right? It's hard to imagine like a loving God that allows these things to happen in our world. And at the same time, I remember like when we were going through our miscarriage and just being like, God, like, why? You could have easily saved our baby, like this, you can, why didn't you? And to just hold that, and it like, I felt mad. It was hard for me to pray or to feel like God cared about me, right? To like come to him when I feel hurt by him at the same time. That felt like a really hard tension to hold. But I remember like one of our pastors saying too, like, when we look at scripture, what we see, the Bible is less clear about why suffering happens, but it is very clear on the character of Jesus when things do happen. And
that's
so
that's so good.
And and so it was okay for me to get to the space where I held like, okay, I don't know why this happened, God, and I wish I had those answers, and I know it's not clear, and I can hold that ambiguity, but I know your character in these times of hurt is that you grieve with us, you're sad with us, you mourn with us, and you're the God of comfort too. And so, and to be able to hold that with those unknowns just gave me a lot of, I think, peace. I mean, I still wrestle with it, don't get me wrong, but there was something there where I was like, I can hold on to this. And I know that, and I can trust the character of Jesus when I'm suffering and grieving.
Yeah, I know. And that extension too of that Second Corinthians reference you just made, the God of all comfort, right? But then going back to our vision of the church, he uses people, right? He uses people. And the next part of that verse is that he comforts us in our time of need so that we can comfort others with his comfort. And so I think we're involved as the church, as people in the church, to empathize and to comfort and to love like Jesus. And he gives us the strength when we need it, where we need it, to help other people. So yeah, just love how that's all woven through the DNA of Replanted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Amen. Okay, so Eric, what would you say are some really important topics that are like foundational, critical for the conference each year, or and maybe specifically for this coming year?
Yeah, I mean, we've hit on so many. I mean, just to pick up right where we left off, it's listening well, it's building empathy, it's hearing stories, it's being comforted by other people's stories, because there's again unique beauty when that vulnerability is shared. So Jen has mentioned before a huge emphasis of what we do. Of course, we have very wise people come up on our stage that we trust and speak and encourage our audience. One big part of that is we share voices from different experiences. We call them flip the scripts, but it could be a biological parent, a foster alumni, adoptees, biological siblings. It's kind of ranges the spectrum. Most of our attendees are parents, right? And so we're trying to get voices of people from those different perspectives, ones that we don't always have lived experience in. And when we do that, beautiful things happen. We learn to listen well. We perceive things differently, right? We perceive our kids and their behaviors and their biological parents and the biological siblings in our family and our extended family interacting with our family. We can just learn to understand what they're seeing and experiencing better. So that's a huge component of the conference that I think is unique to the environment and the experience when people walk away, that their perspective has changed, and also just the power of those same here moments. So we're always trying to find creative ways to build same here moments, to have people connect with other people, right? Because that comfort does happen, whether we're trying to make it happen or whether it's just we happen to be sharing a story and we don't know that someone else at the table has that experience. God uses those moments too. So we're constantly coming up with creative ways in general sessions and in lunches and in breakout sessions to just create that community, to be as much of a catalyst as we possibly can be prayerfully, that God would use in those sorts of ways. And so, of course, we're going to have breakouts with training and information and, of course, a many range of topics. All that's very important to us. But it all really points back to those things where we're just trying to create space that God can use for parents to connect and to gather those resources that they need to be encouraged.
I think too, like we try to step into hard conversations. So we do talk about like, if you're considering a relinquishment, like this is a safe space. We love you no matter what, but like, we're going to have those hard conversations, but we're also going to talk about trauma or sensory processing difficulties, but we're also like, we are going to, as much as possible, try to rally around birth families as well. And so we want to talk about reunification. We want to talk about how to be in relationship with birth families and have open adoptions and conversations, where maybe it feels a little stigmatized or uncomfortable. We're going to have those conversations in grace-filled spaces. We're going to talk about marriage. We're going to point people to Jesus. So sometimes people just need to come and receive soul care. They're like, I've done a lot of trauma trainings and I just need to be poured into, so we'll talk about blocked care. We'll talk about soul care. So there's something for everyone, whether this is your first time stepping in and you're like, I've never heard of trauma. How do I parent my child, to like the other end of the spectrum. It's for everyone. So, and it's not just for families that are in really hard places, right? This is for whether maybe you're just even considering foster care adoption, like let's get you resourced now, like go in eyes wide open, and so there's something for everyone. But I think to touch on Eric's point, somebody posted in our conference page on Facebook a few months ago, there was a group of women that met at our conference for the very first time, and they became deep friends, and they went on a trip together. And so they posted, like, we met at the Replanted conference. We had never met before. We didn't know each other, and now we're dear friends, and they took this trip together. And like, that's what we want, right? Like, yeah. I always say my goal is that if Replanted disappeared and we vanished, it wouldn't matter, because our families have found each other and they're in relationship. And that's what we want. And that's the fuel and the catalyst to keep going. And so when we see that happening, families becoming friends with one another. That's our victory, you know? We love that. So,
Totally. Yeah. You often refer to conferences as like a shot in the arm, right? And it gets you a little ways down the road. And part of that is true. But again, our heart is to create as many experiences, connections, whatever that is, that it can last longer than that, right? Okay, what can we do to set up those long-term support systems? For us, it was starting a Replanted group. For someone else, it might be connecting with a different ministry or a podcast or whatever it is that can give you the fuel that you need to connect with other people who get it and support you long-term on the journey. We know once a year is not gonna cut it most of the time.
right.
Yeah, but this is like, again, this is the humility, the humble nature of this ministry that you have created and that you are creating, that God is moving in, is that like, if really what happens for people is they just meet someone, like you're great with that. You don't need the name of Replanted lifted high, like you don't, that's not your goal. That's not your, and some of that comes from that lived experience, knowing the importance of community, having that word from the Lord, at that critical moment, having that person step in empathetically into your life, into your personal, your family's life, what that feels like. And so, that helps. I'm sure that contributes to, wanting to lead this ministry in such a way that it's really not about the name. It's not about the branding. It's about the connections that people make. And, I just think these lived experiences are, absolutely invaluable for people in their 20s or 30s or even, younger who are just starting in ministry. It's kind of like, well, I want to be centered on Christ. I want this ministry to be centered on Christ. I don't want this to be about me. I don't want this to be about a brand. But some of that, I think, can come from the lived experience, the harder lived experiences being a part of what pours into the ministry. I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, it definitely humbles you to rely on God to do all the driving.
Yes.
So I appreciate Jenn and the way that she leads, and I think that is, a great part of what pushes Replanted forward is we just have to ask God what to do every day.
Yeah. I think that's the thing. Like, I feel like when we're talking about humility, then it feels like not humility anymore. So, that weird.
We're so humble.
Right, we're so humble. Yeah.
So it's okay.
No, I was going to say, I think that's what, like the moment I experienced that Good Friday back in 2012, it really changed my life, and it felt very God ordained, replanted, like it was so clear for me to stay in the US. And even getting the visa, it was a big time uphill battle. And God just really paved the way for it. And so it felt like there's a reason. And then when the invitation from a pastor to start Replanted was created, it has been this, we didn't intend to start a nonprofit, especially a national one. And so it has been this fun journey of kind of like, let's see what God has next, but let's be in obedience to it too. And just, step into our passion of emotional and spiritual support. That is what we want to do. That's what we care about deeply. We want people to feel and supported, encouraged, and closer to Jesus. That's the forefront of what we want to do. And so if this is, I think for us, we've always said, like, even if we're supporting a couple of families, like, they're worth it. We don't need to have this huge, massive ministry with groups all over the country and, thousands of people at our conference. Now, if that happens, it's because those families need it and we are there. But also, like, there's other people doing great work too, and let's do this together. But whatever families God gives us to support, we're going to do it with excitement, enthusiasm, and with everything we've got. And that's what matters to us. So, there's there always is that tension, right, Meredith, with like a nonprofit, like the metrics, right? How many families are you supporting? And you are looking at that because you want to make sure you're learning from and doing well. And we want to hear from our group members. We get feedback all the time. Like we want to refine and, keep making their experience the best that we possibly can. But that's our metric, right? Is
Sure.
when we ask in our surveys, like, do you feel closer to Jesus after being in a replanted group? Did your kids feel safe and loved and cared for? Like, that's what I care about. Those are the metrics and those are the numbers that are important to us. That we took a family that was hurting and we gave them community and they encountered Jesus again. And, we just want to keep living into that.
Yeah. Amen. Okay. So if we were to pull the curtain back just a little bit, what would you say are some challenges that you face either with the replanted groups or with the conference or both? Some challenges that like are behind the scenes that probably, might be unexpected and sharing that in a way that can apply to other people that are in ministry or leading ministries or working with families who have experienced trauma. Like what are some of those challenges that you guys face that might be a little bit unexpected?
I think, Eric and I probably have the same one. Where Replanted is about full family support. And so that becomes a bit of a barrier sometimes. So with our replanted groups, we want parents to come, whether that's, two parents or single parents to come, and we want the children to come as well. But what that means for the leaders of those groups is, finding mentors, because it's not childcare. We're not offering childcare. We're offering an actual group experience. We write curriculum, trauma-informed curriculum for the kids that are part of our group experiences.
That's so
and
cool.
And we want our parents to know that their kids are safe. And so that means background checks and trauma training and sexual abuse awareness training. And that means finding mentors that are going to commit and be able to come to the groups month after month and invest in the lives of our children. It's a lot more work than just doing like a mom's or a dad's group where the kids stay behind and there's a parent to babysit. And so that becomes a little bit of a barrier, right? Is you have to have the time and the bandwidth and the resources to be able to do that. But when you do, I just think it's such a rich experience for our kids and our parents to get that support. And then that same thing applies to the conference, right? Is we ideally, if it's a 2-parent household, we want the parents coming to our event, but that means, can you find childcare for your 8 children or your 2 kids, but that have, trauma histories and more significant needs?
Totally.
That becomes a barrier for getting our parents to the event as well. And we try to break down those barriers as much as we possibly can, but that's something we're always, behind the scenes as a team trying to put thought and intentionality around to make the on-ramp as smooth as possible for the groups. So we're taking as much work away from the leaders as we shouldering as much as we can to support them. And then as much as we can for the conference, scholarshiping families to come to try to get them there as much as we can. If they can make those asks and find people to support their kids while they're away. That's one of the big barriers, I would say. But Eric, did you want to add some thoughts to that? Because you're leading a group and you do the conference, so
No, you hit it nail on the head for sure. I'll just add too, to be totally transparent, we believe in the whole ministry, the whole family being a part of the ministry, and that is a tension at the conference. Of course, in some pie in the sky dream, could we have something where the whole family is supported in the conference environment? That would be amazing. And so that's, deep inside, we wrestle with that a little bit with the conference. And so that is a barrier. But the beauty of it is for all the families that come to the Chicago experience, some of these kids aren't in the home anymore, but it represents thousands of kids that are cared for. So I think last year we put all those names up on the screen and prayed over them at the end of our conference. Thousands of names, 4,000 or 5,000 kids that were cared for by the people who were just at that Chicago experience.
Wow.
So it's just not practical to care for that many kids in that dense of a space or facility. So that's a barrier. It's something we wrestle with. Like Jen said, we're trying to break down those barriers be it financial or practical or other ministries that offer healthy levels of childcare, and trying to get those into the hands of those families.
Yeah. And I think too, like, probably like a more subtle barrier too is like Eric's narrative when they were first, like, had the invitation to come to the conference is like, I'm in such a tender spot. I don't know if I want to come to this. Right. Or it can be easy to just send the mom or just send the dad or, just send one of the parents. But what we see then is one of the parents gets this really awesome experience and dose of support and fuel that becomes a lifeline for them, and the other parent didn't. And now we've got a disconnect, right? Where we've got one parent coming back and trying to educate the other parent and do it this way, and this is what I've learned.
Doesn't always feel good.
It doesn't feel good. It creates friction and some tension, and so that's why we're very passionate about it's got to be. We want it to be full family, and so. We want that experience for everyone. We want our kids to experience the groups. We want this to be something that, as a family unit, is part of the journey you're on together, the narrative you're talking about together. You're speaking the same language. You're getting the same amount of support. I really think that's where we see changes and outcomes. And that's our goal.
And that's why I was so passionate about having you come out, Meredith, right? Because it was the title of the session that broke down that barrier, right? So we want to make sure we present in a way that everybody is welcome, even if you're in that spot.
Well, as we say at James Trail, I'm on the trail. Anybody? Like,
yeah,
I'm definitely on the trail. I do not have this all figured out. I do not implement all trauma-informed practices perfectly. Like we need each other, right?
Oh yeah.
So, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, I was going to say, I can for sure. I mean, my husband's a psychologist. I'm a trauma-informed therapist. And there's times where I'm like, hey, what am I doing? I don't know how to parent my child.
Number one, what did I just say?
I need a redo.
And I've had to do that before, right? Where I'm like,
yeah. I mean, number one, what did I just say? Number two, what am I doing? Number three, how did I get here? Like,
right.
What in the world? Can everything just stop for a second? Yeah.
Yeah.
So as we start to wrap up, sadly, a little bit here, what words of wisdom or encouragement would you have for individuals, families, organizations who, have experienced trauma, have been impacted by trauma, maybe in the realm of church hurt, maybe in the realm of isolation? Like, what would you say, both of you say to individuals, families, and organizations?
I think the biggest encouragement we could give is just that you're not alone. I hope that you can hear wherever you're at. If you don't feel like it's fun to care for your kids anymore, if there's marriage tension, if there's any number of struggles, or substances, whatever it is that life has driven you to, you're not alone. And God certainly sees you, but there's also someone out there that God has given the comfort to, that has the ability to comfort you as well. And so my encouragement is to try and find that community, which can be very vulnerable and difficult and scary. And I think that's why we felt that tension before we attended something like Replanted before. And it wasn't until we knew what it felt like to receive that comfort, how beautiful and essential it is. So it might not be Replanted. It might be something else. It very well could be something else. But as an encouragement to just pray and try and find that community, find that source of comfort.
That's so powerful what you just said, in terms of, like, sometimes we have to receive it to, I don't know that you said this, but almost believe it. We have to receive it to believe that it's possible. Is that?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. That's awesome. Jenn?
Yeah. When you were first asking that question, my first thought was just like, I'm sorry for the hurt that you've experienced, and the pain. And, I know none of us want those experiences, but they've happened. And so my encouragement is, you are loved no matter what. So no matter how messy your background is, your story, no matter how messy you or how messed up you feel like you are, you're loved no matter what by us, by a God who loves you deeply, and by a community of people that you probably haven't fully encountered yet. And so my encouragement is to step out of those shadows, to step out of that isolation, and to find that community that can hold up your arms. That's a big part of what we believe, right? You know, we know that story of Moses, Aaron, and Ur, right? When the Amalekites were beating the Israelites, as long as Moses' arms were up, they were winning. And so to just find those people that aren't going to give you advice and try to take the pain away, that are going to say, we're going to hold up your arms through this season right now. And there'll be times when you're going to do that for others as well. But I think when we can find that community and experience the richness of God's grace, I think that's what I love about grace, is like, we don't have to do anything to earn it. It's just given to us freely. And so as a leader, a church leader, or a parent, I think a lot of times we think we have to have it all together and figure it out and put a nice bow on things. And that's not what scripture says. I think a lot of times when we lead from places of brokenness, that's actually more beautiful, to say, like, we're all in need of God's grace. And so I don't have it all together, and I'm not going to pretend to, but I'm going to step into this space with you and love you as Jesus would. And I'm going to help you encounter Jesus' love too, I think is what's important. So you're not alone.
That's the title of your next book, Jenn, is Leading from a Place of Brokenness.
Yeah.
Both of y'all have done some awesome mic drops here, which is pretty great. So as we close, where are you seeing beauty in this season?
Not to be too cheesy about it, but even just in this moment right now, like I mentioned, we came from a season of what felt like such a deep heaviness, darkness, sadness for the situation, frustration with God. And he has just made it so abundantly clear that he was present with us, even through all of those things. And what a blessing it is, even while we're still walking here on earth, that he's just affirmed his presence to us in that season and been able to redeem some of it. Like Jenn said, we don't always get to see it, but I'm super grateful that my wife and I are able to see how God is using that season in this season of life. I wouldn't have gotten connected with Replanted. It's been a huge blessing to make that transition in our family. Replanted has been hugely helpful. It has just been a beautiful thing, a light in our life for sure. And it's not all buttoned up. It's not all tidy. We're still, continuing to work on our relationship with our daughter and all of the other things in life. But we are able to see some of the beauty, and to be able to have some of these conversations and meet the people that I get to meet is a beautiful thing because of it.
Okay, that is really beautiful. And I'm sorry, what would have been cheesy about what you just said?
This podcast is so beautiful.
Gorgeous. No, I love that. That was awesome. Okay, Jenn.
Yeah, that's a good question. To be honest, Meredith, I think my heart is still in a tender spot from the miscarriage, or we're approaching our due date right now, and that for some reason has felt heavier. I think
I'm so sorry.
other times there was, things were happening, and or we were pregnant again, and so there was we were holding both joy and pain. But right now, I still feel a little kind of, I don't know, not directionless, maybe a little bit. And we've experienced some other loss. I had a very, very dear friend of mine die of cancer a couple weeks ago. And so I think the ways that I'm feeling or experiencing beauty is just in the kindness of friends and family who have been intentionally supporting us and lifting us up, checking in. I've had people I don't know send cards and just prayers, which has been just very sweet. And then I think, like, my church community rallying around us, they've just been so awesome. And again, not taking any pain away, but just coming around us and checking in with no agenda has been really, really great. This one, it was cheesy, but I think another way I'm experiencing beauty is, like, I became a therapist because I love seeing things through the eyes of a child. I loved working with kids, doing counseling. My 4-year-old daughter is just at such a sweet age, and we took her to Disney for the first time this year, like a couple months ago. And it was the best time ever. And so just trying to create space to just enjoy my kids and my family and this season for what it is, I think has been really great. We had small group last night and we were talking a lot about like just kind of stepping into like who God is or like who we are versus what we are. And so I think I'm just trying to step into, I think it's easy for us to imagine more what we are and kind of what we're pursuing, but like being more intentional about who we are and who we are in relationship with God. And so I think, yeah, in this season, I live in Dallas, Texas now, which is a long ways from Canada, but it's definitely almost summer here. And so just stepping into the beauty of spring and vitamin D and all of that. But I think beauty has been, just through kindness from people I love, reaching out and being intentional. I think I'm sure many listeners maybe know, like when you first go through something painful, you get a lot of support at the beginning. And then it trickles, right? And then, but you're still feeling it. And so, find those people that doesn't trickle, and you can still talk about it and be real and get support. And there's no timeline for grief, right? It doesn't need to be this linear downhill slope. It can be all over the place, and that's okay. There's beauty in that too.
Gosh, this has been such a rich, tender, funny, joyful, hard, conversation. And I think that's life, right? That's this planet Earth, and many times what we're called to, what the Lord puts in front of us. And so I'm so honored by this conversation, by your time today, and by your answers and your connectedness to these topics and to our audience. So I'm just so grateful for everything that you not only shared today, but who you are, right? To going back, who you are, who you've been to me personally, and the ministry that is just a cup overflowing to so many families. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having us. Meredith, are you going to be there this October?
I might be.
Okay.
If I'm invited, I'm for sure there.
Awesome. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'd love to have you.
Thank you. It's such a treasure. It really is. It's a very important part of the year for me and for James Trail. So I can't wait.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I can't wait.
Well, thanks for having us, Meredith. We really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you guys so much. And to our listeners, we will see you on the trail.